Hello and welcome. This is Matthias 76. Together we are decoding the deception, and together we're here in the book of Genesis. And today, the section of the book of Genesis that is about Abraham, we're going to see that come to an end here in chapter 25. Now, one thing I want to hit quickly, last time we talked about a wife for Isaac, and I neglected to do something that we love to do here on this channel, and that is look at maps. So when that servant went, Abraham's servant went to find a wife for Isaac, this is the journey he made. So it is quite the ways up here. You'll remember this is the region from which Abraham came. It was called Ur of the Chaldeans then. And this is Mesopotamia. And you look here on this relief map that shows, you can see where the real deserty place is down here, and it's more green near the coast. But this is Mesopotamia, which means between the rivers, and it is comparatively more green, lush, etc. But that is, whenever they journey, if you were to go from Jerusalem or Israel over to this region, you didn't go across here. Nobody goes across here except airplanes. You went over and around this way because this is total barren wasteland and no one can live there. Okay, so let's jump in. We're going to cover the end of Abraham's life and some there. I'm going to refer to them as housekeeping details, but it's not unimportant stuff. It is very important stuff, and we'll talk about that as we come to it. And we'll get to Jacob and Esau, so things start to get interesting. And just a note, it's kind of fascinating. Isaac is, of the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Isaac is the one about whom we hear the least. Isaac's life is there almost just to point to his son, Jacob. There's just not a lot said about Isaac as an individual. We have so much about Abraham. We have a whole lot about Jacob and his sons and their familial dysfunction. But Isaac, there's not as much about him. Let's read. Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Asherim, Letushim, and Leumim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldaah. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines Abraham gave gifts, and while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. Now, do you catch something right there in the last part? We'll talk about the sending them away part. Here, it refers to these sons as sons of his concubines, and plural concubines, and we can say that that's including Hagar when he sent Ishmael. Now that's going back a generation. No, that is. See, I started to get myself confused. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We're still on Abraham here. So we had Hagar who had Ishmael, and he sent Ishmael away, remember? But it calls her a concubine, and it calls her a wife. And there is some confusion about that. The scripture seemed to call her both. Now, why is this here? Why does it matter? Just to emphasize the fact that Isaac was the one. He was the son, the important son, brought about in a special way, having special significance. That is Isaac, Sarah's son. Okay. The others, in comparison, don't matter. He takes care of them, and he sends them away, and there are names in here that we see like Midian. Joseph is going to be sold to Midian traders. Now, Midian comes to stand for a region, but that name comes up again and again. But we've got another interesting thing here. Chronologically, this doesn't fit. This is after, some time after, it would seem, from the flow of the text and the way we read things, well after it was stated that Abraham was too old to father children and Sarah was too old to have children in spite of the fact that she was barren. This is the way this is being presented here. This isn't meant to be chronological. It's just clearing something up. Abraham had taken another wife whose name was Keturah. This probably happened well before. It's not like this happened after Sarah had passed away. And we could talk about concubines and multiple wives and all of that. The scriptures don't really comment on that, and it's not forbidden yet. It's not forbidden yet. But we do see in the scriptures that it never causes anything but problems, and we will certainly see that in the life of Jacob. So he sent these other sons away, and he gave them gifts, and he sent them away. Where did he send them away? It says to the east country, and when it says to the east country, let's see here. East country, generally speaking, was over here, over in this area. I mean, it's east on the map, but it's kind of southeast is where he sent them in that direction. We continue with the text. Verse 7, these are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled in Beer Lahai-roi. So Abraham lived to be 175 years. 175 years old is how long he lives. He was 75 years old when Yahweh called Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldeans. That was at the beginning of chapter 12. So you can just file these things away. Do yourself a favor and file things away where things are in the Bible. I have to be careful. I've gotten sloppy because when I started my theological education, there wasn't Google. There weren't these amazing Bible programs. We had these amazing things called books. You can see some of them here behind me. The ones I still keep out. I have boxes and boxes and boxes of books because now I've got them all in this program. But I had professors who taught me something important. They said, remember where things are. Remember where things are, because you used to have to pop open a thesaurus. Not a thesaurus, it's so long since I've used one. Concordance. It's been so long since I've used one, I have a hard time remembering what it's called. And flip and find where things were, or flip through your Bible. Abraham, chapter 12 through 25. There, you got it. Abraham, Genesis 12 through 25. It's all about Abraham. File it away. Do yourself a favor and remember where things are in the Bible. Because you know what? One day Google could go away and we'll all be stumbling around wondering where our print Bibles are. The internet goes away. Who knows? What you commit to memory, no one can take from you. What is in your heart, no one can take from you. That's why we commit Scripture to memory, not so that we can rattle it off and impress others with our biblical knowledge. That is not the point. It makes our study much more efficient and effective. But what you store away, no one can take. They can take the books, they can take the computers, they can take the internet, they can take all kinds of things. They can take everything except the one thing needful, and we file that away in our heart. So we all need to be conscientious in this lazy age of internet ease to file away where things are. It is important. And you don't need to let everybody know what you know and where it is and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that. It's for you. It's for you that you file it away. Abraham lived to be 175 years old. He was 75 when he was called out of Ur of the Chaldeans. So we could say that he lived 100 years of his life for sure. We don't know about the first 75 years. He lived 175 years in God's grace, in the blessing that God gave, that blessing that keeps on blessing. He says, I will bless you and bless everybody who comes from you. And we see that with his sons. It's very important. So he lives to be 175 years old. He was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man, full of years, and was gathered to his people. I just love the way it expresses that. He breathed his last and he died at a good old age, an old man full of years, and was gathered to his people. You're 175 years old. I bet you do feel like you are full of years. But I am certain that Abraham looked back on his life and saw nothing but the blessings that God had given him. And we need to look at our lives the same way. We can look at the hardship. We could remember negative things. We need to look at our past, our history, our lives in a spirit of thanksgiving, grateful for all the things that our Lord has done for us, acknowledging all the things that the Lord has done for us and how he has turned the difficult things into blessings. Sometimes it takes years and years to see how that plays out, but he does. And that's the way we want to look at our lives. And you notice it's Isaac and Ishmael who bury him. Ishmael still had special status. He was his first son. And Isaac let Ishmael know that Abram died. And you notice it doesn't give us the bedside scene. It doesn't play up the drama. There isn't any of that. This is not a biography. What we are told about Abraham is Abraham's life as it relates to God's long-ranging plan of salvation. That's why we know everything we know about Abraham. It all relates to that. We just jumped pretty much over 60-some years because the last thing we knew, well, no, because we've got the getting a son for Isaac. But between these things, there are huge gaps of time. Okay. God blessed Isaac, his son, and Isaac settled in Beer Lahai. And that's important. We're going to keep this in mind. It relates to other things. Geography matters. And Beer Lahai is the place where the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar when Abraham sent her away. It was in the thinking of these people in this day, just like the oaks of Mamre, it was a God place. It was a God place. It was a place where God had appeared. And so it was holy. It was significant. It was special. And so Isaac, that's where he decided to settle. And you might remember that when that servant was coming back with Rebekah from Nahor up north, when he was coming back, this is where Isaac was. We've all got our favorite places. You can have a family and a bunch of different kids, and one loves the beach, the other loves the mountains. It's just different what we like. He seemed to favor Be'er Lahai, and there he goes and settles. These are the generations of Ishmael. Now, generations, that's that Toledoth, Toledoth in English. Toledoth, generations. Moses, in his structure of this book, he didn't do 50 chapters. He didn't put the verse references in here. In his outline of the book, there were 10 sections, and there were these generations. There was the generation of the heaven and the earth. There was the generation of Adam and Eve. There was generations, different generations of Noah, a generation. It's how he divided the book. Some of them are very short, like we're going to see here with Ishmael. Why does Ishmael get a Toledoth? Why does he get a whole section, albeit small, of the book? Because Ishmael mattered. Because God, at Be'er Lahai, made a promise to Hagar regarding Ishmael, and we're going to see how that promise is fulfilled right here. That's the other reason that it is here. But those who belong to Abraham, are connected with Abraham, are blessed. That's a God thing. It wasn't Abraham doing it. It was God doing it. These are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar, the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in order of their birth: Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, and Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kademah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their encampments. 12 princes, according to their tribes. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, and they settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. He settled over against all his kinsmen. Here again, chronology doesn't matter. He's just going through, and housekeeping, we've got to talk about Ishmael. We've got to close the loop on that because he matters. So he gets a Toledoth, a generation, his generation. And what do we see here? 12 princes. 12 princes. Jacob's going to have 12 tribes, 12 sons. And Ishmael has 12 princes, just as we were told back in Genesis 17:20. Hagar prayed to God, and God responded. The Lord appeared. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and multiply him greatly. He shall be a father of 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. Sounds a lot like what he said about Abraham. Ishmael was special. God kept his promise, and that is, the loop on that is closed here. And again, trying to figure out the chronology here of how this would line up with Abraham's life, that doesn't matter. Or people will put that out on a timeline, and that's fine. But this is here because of the significance of the individual, and that being covered and bringing it full circle. Now, we come to the birth of Esau and Jacob, and you see, boom, we jump right back into another generation. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. We'll stop there. So, Isaac is 40 years old here when he got married. And that can be a few years back again. Moses is not doing a purely chronological structure here. Looking at this, you'd think that this didn't happen until after Abraham was dead. And if you pop it on a timeline and do the math, that doesn't work. It's not the way he's structuring everything. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, etc. She was barren. What is it with these wives of the patriarchs and being barren? Is it just that, if you're looking at this from the perspective of this is all made up and it's just lore, you'd look at this and think they ran out of good ideas, like with TV shows when the plot, they just recycle things and they ran out of, no, that's not the point. If that thought, barren again sounds like a country western song. Barren, another one? What is these guys just have bad luck picking women? What's going on? It strikes us as odd, so let's spend some time thinking about it. Rebekah being barren, like Sarah was barren, makes it abundantly clear that those who are her offspring, it's purely dependent on the grace of God. It's his blessing and not her fertility. It's all about God's blessing and him continuing to bless in the face of adversity. It gave the opportunity for the light of his grace to shine. And the Lord granted his prayer. This is relatively quick resolution here. No time references are given, but it doesn't seem, from the way it's presented to us, as a long drawn out thing. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And when she conceived, God really blessed it because he gave her a twofer. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. We'll stop right there. We'll get to his response. They struggled within her. And the word that's used here is a very strong word. It means it's the word for crush, thrust, attack. It wasn't just struggle. Struggle sounds like the kids are bouncing around in there. This seems fairly intense. It's a scholars look at it and go, whoa, that word stands out. It's not what you would expect. And translating it, struggle is a little bit weak. This expression, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? It's one of those things that grammatically, it's hard to know exactly what it's saying. And sometimes we encounter that. We're not sure of, it's probably an idiomatic expression. Edit. We're not sure. It's probably an idiomatic expression that's just lost with time. And the thrust of it is easy enough. She's upset. She's troubled. And, I've never carried a child. I've never been pregnant and carried a child. And I'm going to be offensive here and say that that's a physical impossibility for me to be pregnant and have a child. My wife was pregnant multiple times. And I remember when the little guys and gals would be very active and be bouncing and kicking. I can't imagine having two kids literally fighting in your womb. That had to be distressing. And she probably really was wondering, this isn't the norm. This isn't the norm. I've been around pregnant women before. This isn't normal. And she was upset. So she went to inquire of the Lord. Remember where I said we are on the map? We're at Beer Lahairoi, that place that the Lord appeared to the distressed woman, Hagar. Now we've got the distressed woman, Rebecca, going to the Lord. She's confident this is a place to inquire of the Lord. He has appeared here before. See? And without stopping and looking at these things and saying, does it matter where this is? We'd miss that. We'd miss that. And the Lord, Yahweh, said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. 2 nations. 2 nations. We've got Esau, who's also known as Edom, the Edomites. We'll see a lot of them later. If you're Edomites, it's not just another one of the nations. Pay attention, Edomites, it comes up repeatedly through the balance of the Old Testament, and Israel is the other nation. So we don't have Jacob out in the world yet and being renamed Israel, but we'll refer to it as Israel. But we've got this strange thing here. We've got this strange thing that the older will serve the younger. That wasn't done. That wasn't the way it was. The older was the heir. The older was the one who received lordship over the house and the household after the father passed away. We're going to see some interesting things with that as it plays out moving forward and continues in the life of Jacob and things that Jacob did. When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. He knew that. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So he was 40 years old when he got married. Gave us that date. Dates matter. And we definitely want to pay attention to them. They help us keep things straight and follow the flow. He was 40 years old when he was married. Now, 20 years later, they're having Esau and Jacob. Now, this is and we'll get to the thing that the picture portrays. This is them with the stew, and we'll talk about the picture. This is thumbnail for the video, although by the time it becomes a thumbnail, I will have run it through my software and made the picture a little bit more clear. But this is a fairly decent representation of Esau, and you just look at the two of them, and Esau is definitely a beefier guy, bigger, stronger guy, and he's got that hair all over him. And there's probably not enough here. They didn't want to probably go too extreme with it. And just the thing about the hair, because it seems odd when Rebecca is going to coax Jacob into fooling his father into thinking that he is Esau, she puts goat skins on his arms. How hairy is that? Now, when I think of this, and I'm going to tell this little this little story for a reason, because it ties in. Way back in the day, many, many moons ago, before the internet, almost before cable TV, I wrestled in high school. And the one thing you didn't want to get, and I and the other higher weight class guys, I wrestled heavyweight, and the guy who wrestled 77 and 85, we'd watch the other team coming in, and we'd joke if if one of the guys who he had to wrestle, or one of us had to wrestle, had hair on his back. You know, if you're wrestling in high school and the guy's got hair on his back, he's a seriously bad guy. Not bad, but tough. Big, strong beast of a dude. And that is what I think of with Esau. He was just a man's man many times over. And that is important to understand because it's in contrast with Jacob, who in comparison was tiny and weak. Yeah, I kept that very nice. I didn't use any pejoratives. In comparison, was tiny and weak and relied on his craft, on his cunning to come out on top. And remember, they were fighting in the womb. And I can imagine how that went. Who got the better of that? But Esau was a mountain man who didn't need a coat. He was just an amazing physical specimen, is what this is telling us. And he was red. And that color comes into play because the word for red and Edom is almost identical. There are all these word plays. Okay, his nickname was Red. Hey, Red. He was red all over. Okay, and then there's Jacob, which means he takes by the heel or he cheats. How does the little guy win in a world of macho men? He trips them up. He cheats. He has to use his craft and his cunning. So keep that in mind, the disparity in physical prowess and cunning, because we'll see it. Jacob is just a really tricky guy. When the boys grew up, big jump in time, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Back to the picture, right? Big difference in these two. Jacob was sitting inside watching the Cooking Channel and Food Network, and Esau was out there living field and stream and outdoor life and hunting and who knows what all he was doing. Isaac, get this, pay attention. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. I think that just the way this is expressed here is just very simplified. Isaac loved Esau because and guys will get this. That's my boy. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. He's a beast. That's my son. Yeah, he's mine. And Rebekah loved Jacob. They had more in common, whatever. But we're going to stop and talk about this a little bit. My wife and I were blessed to raise 6 children. Do you know which one's my favorite? Whichever one I'm talking to. I don't have a favorite. My wife doesn't have a favorite. Our kids have never felt like we have favorites. There are no favorites. God gave them all to you. They're different. Their differences are wonderful. It makes them unique individuals in parenting. It's the parent's job to help each one with the gifts and abilities that they have to become the best servant of God that they can be. There are no favorites. There are no favorites. That's messed up when there are favorites. And do you notice that there's not a note here at the bottom? Moses didn't write, and that was really messed up. Not the way the scriptures do things. The scriptures, just like it'll tell you that they had multiple wives, and it didn't say, and that was a bad idea. Yeah, guess how that's going to work out? It just shows us. It just shows us how those things play out. We're going to see the same thing with Jacob when he's got his favorite, Joseph. How does that play out? It's wrong. It's just wrong. As a parent, it is just wrong. And I'll share a piece of wisdom. I had a guy I knew, and he was a professor at a Christian college, a psychology professor. And he and his wife found out, and I was working for him in the summer. He painted. in the summer. And I was working for him while I was in seminary, and he and his wife found out that their one son, and his wife was a professor too, that their one son was a little slow, developmentally slow. Nothing drastic, but somewhat slow. And his wife was so upset, and, just as a parent is, you want the best for your kids, and their other kids were just sharper than sharp. And he shared these amazing words with her, and I filed them away. This is 37 years ago, and I still remember them now. He said, God doesn't call on us as parents to raise smart kids. He doesn't call on us to raise amazingly successful kids by the world's standards. He calls on us to raise Christian kids. And that doesn't matter what their abilities are. I've remembered that word for word for so long because I was a father of two very young children at that time. And there's just so much truth that's there. As parents, we raise our children for the Lord. And we realize that all of them are blessed gifts from Him. And it doesn't matter their intelligence or athletic ability or whatever else. And in my years of ministry as a pastor, as a counselor, I've seen so many people who are damaged by their parents' unrealistic expectations of them, their disappointment with them. Don't put your kids through that. Love them all, no matter who they are, no matter what their skill set and gifting, and make sure they know that you love them, no matter who they are, that you're thrilled to be their parent. That's the way things should be. And if Isaac and Rebekah had operated that way, you have to wonder how things might have played out differently, because the pain and the strife that results from this is going to carry on for decades, and we will revisit it. All your kids are your favorite kids. Don't forget that. Once, some point in the future, they're big guys now. Oh, I forgot something else. This important thing up here that the Lord, Yahweh, told Rebekah. You always have to wonder, didn't she tell Isaac? And if she did tell Isaac, why didn't Isaac operate as though he knew this? Either way, there's something amiss, because Isaac isn't going to operate as though he knew this, and Rebekah is going to show that she can be fairly tricksy herself. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. He'd been out there wrestling with bears and eating lions whole and being a man's man, and he was starving. He was hungry. And as we read through this, I had to scratch the top of my head. Edit. As we read through this, think about not just the actions, but what the actions say about the character. In the old saw that is very true, you see who people really are when they're in stressed situations, when they're at their worst. You see who people really, really are. You know, the athletes who will smack their girlfriend or wife around and then come out and say, well, that's not me. No. Yes, it is. You smacked her around. When you were at your worst, you smacked your wife around and beat her up and left her in an elevator. That is the real you. The other stuff's just for show. You were in a stress situation, and the real you came out. Okay. In this stress situation, we're going to see Esau's character, and we're also going to see Jacob's character. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and was exhausted. Yeah, I told you he was home watching the Food Network. He was watching Beat Bobby Flay and Chopped and Iron Chef and learning how to make delicious stew. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew." I got to do this. Let me eat some of that. Edit. Didn't mean to do that. Going to make that go. Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. And red and Edom. Red and Edom. If you look way down at the bottom left, you'll see that those two words look a whole lot unlike. Red. Oh, we'll do it. Let's see. A whole lot harder to find Hebrew stuff on the fly. That is verse 30. Here, there's red. And there's Esau. Edom. Very similar. Got that? That's the article in front of it. You got that? And you got this. The words are very similar. It's a word play in the Hebrew, but it's true. He was red. So Edom's hungry. Esau's hungry. He said, "Give me some of that red stew." And Jacob's response was, "Well, hey, red, sell me your birthright now." Who goes to that? Who goes to that? You've got a big pot of stew. Your brother comes up, asks for some, and you go to sell me your birthright. We see both their characters, and we'll get to Esau's in a moment. Esau said, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob answered, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. What that means is he traded inheriting everything. Isaac had wealth beyond the dreams of avarice. And Esau, in a rash moment, because he was hungry and cranky, you know, like the Snickers commercials where people get hangry. He was hangry, and he traded it all away for a bowl of red lentil. Notice it says it's lentil stew. For stew. So you got this crazy thing. Esau's just rash and in the moment. And honestly, we see this. Does this guy, is he the one you want in charge of an empire? No, he's not. But then you got Jacob, who's kind of a weasel. He knows his brother. And you know, you can see the interaction of siblings. Let's take two brothers. And you can see their interaction, and you think, well, that kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. Two 40-year-old guys, a 45-year-old guy and his 42-year-old young brother. That seemed to come out of nowhere. Most of the time, here's the answer. No, it didn't. They've got 42 years of history going back, and they haven't forgotten any of it. So when Esau walked up looking the way he did, Jacob, the deceiver, the supplanter, the one who grabs the heel and trips people up, knew, man, this is the moment to get him, because he's rash, and when he's this way, he'll do anything for some chow. So he put it out there. Give me your birthright. Sell me your birthright right now. And it's sell, not give. Sell. I'll give you the food. You can have the whole pot. Have seconds. Like Old Country Buffet. You can have all you want. And Esau went for it. He went for it. Just a fascinating thing that we see here. So we gave it to him. And thus Esau most certainly despised his birthright, threw it all away. Kind of hard to believe. But like I said, this antipathy between the two of them, this baggage, it's like they've got baggage. We've all got baggage, right? With family, we've got baggage. The bags are open, they're laying on the bed, and you're throwing your clothes in, right? Well, they just keep throwing more and more and more stuff into that baggage, and it'll just get heavier and heavier, and it will continue to be borne, the weight of that baggage, many, many years from now, and divide them and keep them apart. So next time, we'll be back with chapter 26. I sure hope that this ministry, that what we do here at Decoding the Deception is a blessing to you. And I know we've got a very loyal audience of people who watch on a regular basis, people from around the world. And I thank you for watching. I thank you for hitting that like button. I thank you for sharing this, putting it out on your social media feed so that we can spread the word and this teaching of our gracious God farther and farther and farther. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless and have a great day.